Don't move. You've chosen to not move. Why?
Because I know you and I can trust you.
Really? Do you know me?
I've seen your face before.
Really? Where?
Can't remember exactly where, but I know I've seen it before we came here.
Do you think that seeing my face constitutes knowing me?
Not necessarily, but I know of you, and
You
I
know
know
of me.
you're
And that
person
leads
enough.
you to trust me?
I can trust you enough.
Do you think that you've seen any people that you can't trust, that you know, so to speak?
There would be a few, yes,
Okay, so why do you think I differ from those people?
because you haven't given me a reason.
Interesting. So do you trust people by default until they've given you a reason?
At a certain level, yes.
At a certain level, yes. At what level? Did you describe that?
I would say, I hope that was alright.
No, it's fine.
Basic level of trust, I trust you not necessarily to be a bad person, but not to be a great person either. Like
Okay.
I don't expect.
So you think that I'm we'll say morally neutral at the time.
Yes.
You don't know if I'm good or bad, so you assume I'm morally neutral?
Yes.
All right, now you've moved. Why?
In a discussive position.
You're in a discussive position.
And this is natural.
So you've
resting position
embraced
for me.
this as a discussion.
Yes.
Do you think that it's still an experiment?
Yeah.
Why?
Because we're being recorded.
Really? I record things a lot. Do you think everything I record is an experiment?
No.
No. So why do you think this differs from other things?
Because how many other people just randomly stop you at almost 9 o'clock at night and say, "Can I shake your hand?"
It's past 9 o'clock at night. It's
Fine.
actually almost 10 o'clock at
Oh,
night.
well, would you look at that? Oh, indeed.
You can leave if you need to. This can take as long or as little time as you want it to. You can end the experiment whenever you'd like. How do you define an experiment?
An experiment, I would say, would be somebody setting a set of parameters in hopes of answering a question and then acting on hoping to trying to answer said question.
And you think this does constitute an experiment? What do you think the question is?
How trusting are people?
How trusting are you? Interesting. Do you think trust is an important value?
Yes.
Why?
Because with me personally, somebody who has an interest in military, especially combat part of the military, trust is imperative.
Interesting. So it's important to you because your life depends on it.
Yeah,
That you
in
trust
some
the people.
cases, although very rare, it can depend, or your life could be on the line. But in most other days, not really.
So do you think it's more important for some people to have trust than others? So for example, do you think it's more important for a soldier to have trust in his fellow soldiers than just for me to have trust in my friends?
I would say yes, only so that that team can make it home safe. Obviously, you're trusting your friends and they're trusting you is still
It is important, but it's less important than the trust in a soldier.
In the situation of life and death, yes.
Do you think there's other situations that don't include life or death in which trust is more important than others?
Yes.
Okay, what can you give me an example?
You're coming home from a party and you're blackout.
Oh yeah?
Or you're trying to get home, and you need to get in contact with somebody you trust that you know is gonna get you home safe. You know, you're not gonna get robbed or jumped or.
So you think it's when any sort of bad thing could happen to you if you were to call somebody who you didn't trust. And so it's important to have somebody that you do trust.
Yes. Or if you're just having a rough night, call up a friend who you can rely on in that situation, and they're not going to go around telling everybody like, "Hey, this person cried to me about this."
So it's important to trust someone.
Yes.
Do you think it matters who that person is for most people?
Yes.
Why?
You can't go around just trusting anybody.
Well, do you think it's important for them to trust a particular role in their life? So let's say there's a difference between a friend and a teacher.
Yes.
Do you think it's important to trust a teacher? Why? And do you think that trust is different from the trust of a friend? That's a better question.
I think those would be different kinds of trust, only because the relationship you have with a friend is different than a relationship you would have with a teacher.
Okay.
You trust the teacher to provide you with what you need, so you can use your own tools to succeed in class. If you ask them a question, you can trust them to answer that question.
Okay.
If
Do you think they would do those things regardless of whether or not you trust them?
Yes, because that's their job.
So why is it important to trust them?
Because if you can't trust them, why would you ask them in the first place? If you don't
Oh,
believe
okay.
that they're
So the
going,
trust leads you to act, to get help.
yes.
Interesting.
If
Do
you don't
think
trust
that,
them to be able to give you the answer, then you wouldn't go to them at all.
Do you think that people trust their teachers by default, or do you think that it's something that's built?
I think that's something that's built because, for me personally, all of my teachers have been phenomenal.
Okay.
And to a certain level, I have trusted them with some things.
Would you ask a teacher a question on the first day of class?
Probably not, only because like all the basic questions I would have would already be answered.
Interesting. Let's say you did have a question though. Would you trust the teacher enough on the first day of class, having no knowledge of them, to answer your question?
Yeah, because I mean they've probably been asked that question a dozen times.
Okay. So there's a sense of you trust them because you know that they're still in the job, they haven't been fired yet.
And because
they-
they just have far more experience.
And because they have the credentials.
Yes. They have the experience, they have the credentials.
What if it was a new teacher?
A new teacher?
You don't know if it's a new teacher in the school, you don't know them, you don't know anything about them. They're a brand new teacher at the university or your school, and none of your friends know anything about it, you don't know anything about them. Would you still trust them enough to answer your question? You don't know if they have credentials. They could be some random person the university hired off the side of the road. For all you know. Would you still ask them a question?
Probably not, just so I can see what kind of teacher they are first.
Interesting. So you do think that you need to have some sort of trust built before you engage in it?
Yes.
Do you think there's situations where you need to engage with somebody if you don't have any sort of built up trust?
How do you mean?
Let's take, for example, your car breaks down on the side of the road and your phone is dead. You have no way of contacting anyone, and somebody pulls over, and you've never met this person. You don't know anything about them, and they offer to help you. Do you think it's important that you trust that person?
I think it's important that,
Or rather, do you think it's good that you trust that person? Or do you trust that person?
I would accept their help, but would I completely trust them right off the bat? No.
So you would trust them to a certain extent, but not to a full extent.
To a certain extent, yes.
How do you determine the extent to which you trust individuals?
How they prevent themselves walking up.
How they present themselves?
Because you can tell a lot about a person and their intentions just by their body language.
Interesting. How so?
If they're, looking around, acting all nervous, scratching their face, messing around with something, then they're nervous. But, if they're just walking over, head up, square, shoulders back, standing up straight, then they're pretty sure about themselves.
So if somebody looks nervous, you think it's possible that there's good reason to lack trust in that person?
Yeah, and it could be because they don't entirely trust you.
So do you think that it's a bad thing to trust somebody who does not trust you?
I think how you would trust them to an extent, you should have them trust you to an extent as well. You should show them that you can't trust me fully because we just met, but I'm not going to do anything to harm you.
Interesting. Do you think that, given the fact that I've asked you more questions than you've asked me, I know more about you, would it be fair to say that I trust you more than you trust me?
Maybe.
Do you think that's a good thing? For me.
I don't see how it can be bad.
Do you think it's a good thing for you? Because you have a certain lack of trust in me, and obviously this is a hypothetical to some degree.
Yeah.
But let's say you have a certain lack of trust in me that I don't have in you. Do you think that would negatively affect you?
No.
No. Wow, how so?
Because, I can't remember your name, but I know I've seen you around.
Okay.
And
Do you think it would negatively affect me to have more trust in you than you have in me?
I don't
So
see how
then-
it could.
How is it important that, or does it affect, trust is mutual though, yes?
Yes.
Do you think that you gain trust in me by the fact that I trust you? Interesting, how so?
Because if the person trusts you, then that shows that they have a certain level of respect for who you are.
And you trust people who respect you.
Yes. Well,
Makes sense. Well, is there a situation where you would not trust somebody who you perceive to respect you?
I take that back because a real life situation for me, there's a guy back home who he's a bit particularly annoying and he gets on everybody's nerves, but he's a man of his word and he works hard. So credit where credit is due, and I have to respect him for that.
Okay, so you respect him,
Yes,
but do you trust him? And does he trust you?
I would trust him with some things. Yes,
Okay.
some of them I wouldn't trust him to. If we can skip past that, actually.
Okay. You don't have to use that specific example. That's okay.
All right.
All right. How do you think that trust and respect are similar?
In some ways, yes.
In some ways. How are they different?
Because if you respect somebody, trust comes with respect. To be able to trust somebody, you have to respect them to some degree. Because you can't just go up to somebody you don't like at all and expect them to do what you ask.
So you need respect to have trust. Do you need trust to have respect?
I would say yes, because if I can trust you, then I know there's a mutual respect.
Okay. So your feelings of respect and your feelings of trust tend to be at the same level with someone.
Yes.
Do you think there's a situation where your feeling of respect and your feeling of trust are at different levels? Can you trust somebody without respecting them, or respect them without trusting them?
I don't think so, because with me personally, if you've earned my respect, then you will have more than likely have already earned my trust, and I can't think of a situation where you've earned one but not the other. I mean,
That's
maybe
very
there is a situation where that's possible, but
So
not
they're
one
not
that I
quite
can think of.
synonymous, but they have an equal value.
Yes.
Would you say so? Very interesting. Which would you say is more important? Would you say that either one is more important?
Not necessarily, no. Only because I can't really put one above the other.
Do you think there would be specific examples in which one is more important?
I'm sure there is.
Could you think of any? You don't have to think of any if you can't. You can end the experiment at any time, and you can refuse to answer any question you like.
I can't think of an answer to that one.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Do you think that there is... Let's talk about respecting numbers of people. Do you think it's better to have a lot of respect and trust? We'll use the terms kind of synonymously, even though they're not the same thing, for the sake of simplicity. Respect and trust. Would you say that it's better to trust one person very, very much with like your whole self, or to trust many people only a little bit? Which is better?
Trusting one person with more of yourself.
Why?
Because then you both have a greater understanding of who you are as a person, and you can go to them with more problems or more hardships, or just words of advice for good times, than a bunch of people you trust a little. Because the more you understand a person, then the more you can trust
So there's
them.
no need to have multiple people when you have that one person who's always there. Interesting. Would you say that the two are mutually exclusive?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
Because you're only trusting one person with your full self.
Okay.
And if you're always going to that one person for, say, advice, then you begin to understand how they think, and you're not getting any independent third-party ideas
Okay.
And then with a bunch of people that you only trust a little bit, they don't quite fully understand who you are, and you don't fully understand who they are. Sure, you get a lot more feedback, but it's not quite as specific as it could be to your situation.
Do you think that you can have one person who you trust almost fully, but not quite fully? There's maybe some little bit of gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And then have that not quite fully be filled in by a number of people who you only trust a little bit?
Yes.
Yes. So you think there's almost a level of trust. You can think of trust as like a bar, right? And you give a little bit to some people and a little bit to other people.
Yeah.
But you can give one to most of it to one person, or all of it to one person. That's very interesting. That is very interesting. And we're still defining trust and respect in the same way in this example. Is that
Yes.
right? Very interesting. Have you thought about this very much before this moment?
I've thought about it some.
Have you ever come to that conclusion before this moment of like a bar, so to speak?
Not the bar specifically.
Maybe
but,
a bar is the wrong word for it.
Well, no, I
You
do.
get the
I do
idea.
understand that, but holding trust and respect at sort of the same level, that I have thought about before.
That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. What do you think about this experiment?
I think it's good. I think it gets people really thinking about something that not many people typically do think about.
Would you say that you're glad that you did this?
Yeah. Gives me something more to think over and try and understand.
Are you
better.
going to tell your friends about this? You think this is kind of epic?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm running out of questions, so you can end the experiment at any given point in time, and we are equals, so therefore I can too. So it's been good talking to you.
Good talking to you too.